Hello and welcome to this juicy hips flow. It's going to be a short flow, about 20 minutes, but we're going to get straight into it. So we are going to start in child's pose. Have the fingertips pointed to the front of the mat, knees slightly wider than the edge of the mat, sink the hips down. If you need a block or a pillow to place underneath your hips, then please do so. Just allow the weight of your hips to sink down towards the ankles. Fingertips pointing actively forward, and then allow your forehead down to rest towards the floor. Take a few moments here to allow yourself to open up towards the ground. Breathe into the space behind the heart. Lift the rib cage towards the ceiling. Exhale, draw the rib cage down towards the ground. Sink the chest a little bit deeper if you can. Now start to breathe into the space around your hips. Just imagining the air circling and flowing down towards the pelvis, into the hip joints, down to the knees, all the way to the ankles. From here, look up towards the thumbs, walk the hands in towards under the shoulders. Walk the hands forward as you sink the hips up. Come into your tabletop position. Draw the knees in underneath the hips. Stack the hands under the shoulders. From here, we're going to take the right knee in towards the chest. And then we're going to take our left knee, tap the left elbow. And then we're going to take our foot, activate it to the left, and then kick it out towards the side so our shin comes parallel to the mat. From here, we're going to activate our glute, squeeze the glute, take that foot up towards the ceiling. So we're kicking into the ceiling. I don't want you to come into a back bend. Keep drawing that lower belly in so we're nice and active. And then circling it back around so it taps that left elbow. So we're not just doing random circles, we're drawing our hip in a nice big square up towards the ceiling, really moving into our areas and our range of motion. Keeping that foot nice and active and staying active in the glute as well. So we're turning on the muscles around the hip. One more this way, taking it to the side, up to the ceiling, and then tapping the elbow. Now we're going to take it in the opposite direction. So from here, we're kicking the ceiling, squeezing the glute, drawing that shin around parallel, tapping the elbow, taking to the ceiling again, drawing it around, trying to keep our pelvis nice and level as we move through, keeping our spine nice and neutral as well. Good. Glute should be burning a little bit here. And then one last kick out to the side, tap the elbow, and then release it down. Moving that left hip knee in towards the center of the mat, push the ground away, so active in the shoulders, and drawing that knee to the elbow, tapping it here, taking it to the side, squeezing the glute, kicking the ceiling. Maybe this side feels a little bit different towards the other side. That's okay. Keep drawing those big square circles. So moving mindfully through each of these movements, looking back to check to make sure you're getting as high as possible, keeping that foot nice and active. And then before we change direction, kicking the ceiling, taking this big square in the opposite way. There we came. Whew, glutes burning. Really working into the hip now. Kick the ceiling out to the side and releasing. Releasing that knee down to the ground. Sinking the hips back very briefly, coming into 90-90s. Change position where I am in the mat, and we're going to take our hands behind us to just move through to begin with this little range of motion we're creating, taking the knees from side to side. And maybe you can float the hands now if this feels okay, and you can use your core a little bit more to kind of get into the rhythm of it. Please do try it. So some of you might find this a little bit trickier, some of you might find this a little bit easier. It gets better with time. And then let's stop over on our left side, so our shins and knees are dropped over to the left. Tuck that big toe in towards the body, and I want you to drop that left knee to the mat and squeeze the glutes, come up into a half kneeling position. So squeeze the hips moving forward, and then slowly sink yourself down. If you need to bring your hands down to the ground, please do. Just take it on the other side. So again, tuck that toe in towards the body, squeeze the glutes, hips up towards the ceiling, squeezing here. and releasing with control all the way down to the mat. Swapping sides again. Inhale, come up. Exhale, releasing down. Going as slowly as possible, using as much control and awareness as we can, which part of our body is doing maybe a little bit more than we'd like to be doing, or maybe a little bit less. Taking it one more each way, so back over to the left side, slowly easing down to the ground, taking it over to the right side, pushing yourself all the way up and squeezing, sinking down onto the floor. Take the feet back out behind you, taking it into a brief child's pose before taking ourselves all the way up into our downward facing dog. Pedaling out the heels, opening up a little bit through the shoulders, bring the feet together, and then straightening that right leg into your three-legged dog, bending that knee and trying to draw nice big circles, opening up that right hip and then changing direction. Moving with as much control as possible, trying to keep the shoulders square to the mat if possible. And then coming to some stillness. From here, look between the thumbs and then send the right foot outside of the right hand. Drop the left knee down, coming into our low lunge, but in more of a dragon position. So you can walk that right foot out to the outside edge. Maybe turn the toe away. You can plant the left hand down, or if you need a block, potentially you can have a block underneath the shoulders if you want to feel a little bit more open. Check that your left leg is nicely straight out behind you, and then you can use just your hand above the top of your knee here to just open up into that hip. Moving slowly, maybe drawing some circles if that feels good. And when you think about drawing the tailbone down towards the mat, so you're opening up into this left hip flexor here. Should feel a nice stretch going on here, especially if you're a runner and you get tight hip flexors, really good stretch to do. Again, we're making this mobile, we're making this dynamic, so we're moving into it here. Trying to stay active in the glutes as well as we move around in our circle, so we're building a little bit of intelligence here. Maybe you're ready to release the block. If you are, that's great. If you're staying on the block, that's absolutely fine. And from here, we're going to take our right hand up towards the sky, coming into a nice twist here. Maybe you can look back towards the back edge of your mat and maybe kick that foot in towards the glute, the back foot here. Without reaching for it first, I want you to first activate. So we're doing a bit of a hamstring curl here. So we're squeezing our glute, squeezing our hamstring, holding here for 1, 2, almost getting cramp. 3, now we can grab that foot, draw that foot in towards the body, push the ground away, still with that left hand, so you're assisting the twist and assisting the stretch now, but stay active in the glute and the hamstring, so you're building that intelligence and that creating that space with some muscle memory. Good. One more breath here, and then we will release that foot down towards the ground. Step the hands to the front of the mat, wiggle that foot in towards the hands, and then we're going to step it back into our downward facing dog. Taking the big toes to touch again, inhale, lift the left leg up towards the sky, bending that leg, and then drawing a nice big circle like we did on the other side. Maybe this already feels a little bit more open because you've already stretched that front hip flexor. You can really feel a difference already. Taking that circle in the opposite way. Try to stay nice and active in the shoulders so you're still being really aware in your down dog, not sinking into it. Coming to stillness and then looking forward, send that left foot outside of the left hand. Dropping that right knee down. Again, if you used a block before, under that right hand, you can use that. Walk that left foot out slightly to the outside edge of your mat. Roll open that left hip. So again, moving in nice circles. Oh, can definitely feel a big difference on this side. Right hip flexors, not happy. Drawing circles, moving into any space that feels a little bit tight, but also be aware of what's opposing that muscle. So for instance, my left hip flexor, my right hip flexor is very tight. So I like to activate my right glute because that's going to lengthen the front of that hip flexor there, okay? So it's about being aware of how you create space and length using other muscles rather than just trying to stretch that one particular area out. Think about opposing muscles too. What can we work to create length and to create space on the opposite side of that? Good. If you're ready to release the block, you can release the block. And then taking that left hand up into that stretch, push the ground away, fingertips really pulling each other apart, lengthening the collarbones. And then we're going to kick that back foot in towards the glute. Again, before we reach and grab for it, this is where you hate me. You're squeezing that foot in towards the butt, in towards the hip. All right hamstring and glute are working hard now in this fake hamstring curl, squeezing. Ooh, one more breath here before the leg starts to cramp, and then we're grabbing that foot, and then you can pull that foot in towards you, feeling that nice stretch in the quad down the front of the body. Stay nice and active in that shoulder. Notice my shoulder is sinking up towards my ear. Keep active here, and then engage that glute. So now we're creating that muscle memory, creating that length and that stretch here. Staying here for just 2 more breaths. Keep squeezing the glute. And exhale, let's release it down to the floor. Tuck that back toe, take that left foot back, stretch it out, downward facing dog. Feel the nice difference in the hips here. Walking it forward. And from here, we need to tiptoe all the way to the front of the mat. And then send the feet to the outside edges of the hands. We're going to sink down into our Malasana, into our Yogi Squat. Now I want you to think about taking the toes slightly wider. So rather than typically we would say use the elbows to press the knees apart, I want you to think about activating the outside of your glute, these abductors here, and we're pushing out our feet to the outside edges. So we're creating strength. We're not using ourselves to passively move into the stretch, even though that does feel great. We want to also create a bit of muscle memory here. So if you can, use the elbows first and then release. Maybe the knees stay there, maybe they start to cave in. That's okay. Go back to the push, squeeze, activate the glutes and stay. Legs should be a little bit burning. Notice I'm not sinking all the way down into my passive flexibility here. This to me feels more comfortable. This is much harder. So be aware of what's creating heat within the muscles and what's just allowing you to be really comfortable. Both are okay, but just be mindful in your practice where you're at, what you're aiming for. Know the difference. Whew. And if you're there, you want to have a stretch, release yourself down. Take the hands forward, come into a nice wide-legged forward fold, softening the legs if you'd like to. Maybe elbow to elbow, softening down, feeling that nice hamstring stretch here. And then place the palms down to the ground. Walk it all the way back down to downward facing dog. From here, look between the thumbs. Draw the right knee in towards the chest and step the right foot between the thumbs. From here, we're going to come up into our warrior 2. So we're going to sweep our hands all the way up. Take that back foot 45 degrees. Open the arms up into a nice warrior 2. Sink into that front leg a little bit more. Don't be scared to take this stance a little bit wider. We've warmed up the hips nicely. So take a moment here. Make sure your knee isn't caving in. Turn on the outside of that right glute. Have your drishti over your thumb, over your middle finger. Breathe up into the collarbones. Feel that lightness of the shoulders stacking over the hips. Good. From here, we're going to move into our prayer position. I'm going to straighten that front leg, move to Skandasana to the back of the mat. So toes, right toes come up towards the ceiling, left toes pivot towards the back corner of the mat. I'm going to sink down to the left side. Moving into our Skandasana. And don't worry if your knee goes beyond your toe, that's completely fine. Or if you want to keep your right foot down, that's also fine. Try not to go all the way down into your passive flexibility. Again, know the difference of where you're working and where you're not working. This might feel stretchy and intense in a different way, but this feels a lot harder. You know the muscles are working here. Holding here for 1, 2, 3, come up to standing, stretching the leg, Then we're going to go for 3 pulses to the left side. So right toes up to the ceiling. Exhale down. Inhale up. Exhale down. Inhale up. Exhale down. Inhale up. Good. From here, take the hands out nice and wide. As you exhale, come into a forward fold. Good. From here, walk the hands all the way towards the back of the mat. Toes point towards the front of the mat now. Ready for warrior 2 on the other side. So we're going to sweep the hands all the way up. Exhale, bend into that front leg, opening up the arms, swapping sides now. So again, try not to draw those, let those ribs flare out, draw them in. Maybe think about the tailbone shooting down towards the floor if you know you tend to have a bit of a pelvic tilt. Stretching fingertips nice and wide, opening up the front of this hip flexor here, sink into that front leg a little bit more. One more breath. I'm going to straighten that front leg. Take those toes up towards the ceiling. Skandasana to the right side, so hands to prayer position. Take that right toe to 45 degrees. Straighten that left leg, sink into that right side. Good. Maybe this feels a little bit more juicy. Again, knowing the difference of our passive flexibility that's available to us, where we're going to be working hard. I know for me, which feels much easier, it's not this one. One more breath here. Inhale, straighten that leg. Going for those pulses again. Exhale down. Inhale up. Try to keep that heel down. Exhale down. Inhale up. Exhale down. If this heel's coming up, just come a little bit higher in the hip. You don't need to go all the way down to bring the ankle up. Inhale, stretching it out. Exhale, forward fold. Stretching out the hamstrings. Maybe walk the hands forward, or maybe if you want to walk the hands underneath behind you, dropping the head down, breathing into the hamstrings. But try to keep a little bit of tension on them so we're not relaxing completely here again. Inhale, halfway left. Exhale, walk the hands all the way to the front of the mat now. Step the right foot back, downward facing dog. When you're ready, roll forward, come into a child's pose. Take the knees out nice and wide. Back where we started, let the hips sink down towards the ground. Rest the forehead down towards the mat. Allow yourself to just breathe into the space you've created in the hips now. Maybe it feels a bit unfamiliar. Maybe it feels really nice. Just allow yourself to feel this space. Maybe you're feeling a little bit of heat, and that's a good thing. You can stay here, or you can carry on with the flow. Repeat it. Or maybe you'd like to take a Shavasana. Whatever you are in today's practice, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you again on the mat very soon.